Hey everybody, Lieutenant Joe Pangaro here for Hope is Not a Tactic, the School Safety and Security Show. So a topic I want to talk about, I've been meaning to get to. I've written a couple of articles about it. I'm putting a training class together, is on trauma-informed response. Now, a lot of times we will see in the world of education, law enforcement, the world in general, that topics start to pop up that at first might not seem as though they are prevalent. And it's something we need to, well, we could think about it, we move on. The idea of trauma-informed care is one of those topics. And trauma-informed care is starting to develop some speed and some intensity, and that's good. I had to go out and really learn about it. I had to really think about it and research it and figure it out and see how does it fit in to my safety and security concerns for school. So I want to thank our sponsors, Blue 360 Media, my publisher, RiotTint.com, who bring you amazing safety and security products in security window film, and then MedicalEssentialDiagnostics.com. They are a group that takes care of New Jersey first responders, school people, anybody that works for any government entity. You can get a complete physical at no cost to you and find out if there's anything wrong so you can live. I want to thank them because without them, we wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be able to offer you this information. So I did a program with Captain Donna Hernandez. She's a retired officer. She's an instructor. She does a lot of instruction in many, many different topics. She's a brilliant woman. But I was doing a program for the Newark, New Jersey School District for their security personnel. And one of the things that they were concerned about was trauma-informed responses. They wanted to know about that, which I thought was fantastic. So I reached out to Donna, who is an expert in this kind of a topic, and she came in and did a beautiful program, and everyone responded to it so well. That's kind of what gave me the impetus to go out and learn and figure out what else do I need to know about this. So I want to talk about it in relation to trauma-informed responses for school planning, safety, and security. All right, so for anybody who doesn't really understand the concept of trauma-informed response, let me give you a short definition. All right, trauma-informed response means understanding that people suffer trauma, lots of different ways. Children suffer childhood trauma, right? Maybe they have a difficult home. Maybe they've been abused in one way or another. Maybe they live in a community where there's a lot of violence and they're very upset by that violence. Some children will display that and you'll know, wow, they're having a problem. Other children will not, but it can affect them for the rest of their lives. Now we know trauma can happen to children in any community. You know, any community. You can take a very, very wealthy community and you can have a family that is totally dysfunctional, that there's abuse going on. There's all kinds of things, abuse between the adults and the children and all kinds of things. And that can affect a child forever. Well, we also know in communities that are more prone to crime, let's say, communities where crime is prevalent everywhere. And that's other than the very wealthy communities, that's all of us. You know, all of our communities have some level of crime or another, and how it affects us depends. Now, we know we've seen adults who become completely paranoid and they won't go out. They're scared to death. We've seen that. And that could be a psychological condition. But we see children, how they interpret that trauma, how it affects them can be lots of different ways that we see it. And I know in schools, we have psychologists, we have counselors that understand this very well. Well, we need to really start to develop these kind of programs much more in depth. And one of the ways that I think I can do something to help is when it comes to trauma-informed emergency planning for schools. Right? That's the article. So I write a lot for Campus Safety Magazine. I believe I sent this to them. I think it's coming out, might be out today. I'm not sure. But I want to go over some of these points so that we can talk about them, because if you've never considered this, I'm going to suggest you do consider it. It's extremely important. All right, so let's see. What did Lieutenant Joe have to say? Creating safer schools through trauma-informed response. Every school has a safety plan, but not every school has a trauma-informed safety plan. In our modern world, where we now understand that childhood trauma of all kinds can affect children for their entire lives, we must do what we can to plan trauma into consideration for what we're doing. That's the basis. So how does that connect? Well, we do lockdown drills, right? And what are we locking down from? Because, well, maybe we lock down because there's a deer got into the school, and I know that happens in some rural schools. But the biggest purpose, the reason we're all locking down, is because there's an active shooter or suspected active shooter, some other form of violence taking place in our school, and we're trying to protect everyone from getting hurt, so we lock down. Now, for a long time, there's been conversations in the safety and security world and education world that said that you should never do an unannounced drill because they can affect people. They don't, all of a sudden there's a lockdown drill. Are we going to die? Is there somebody in the school going to kill us? And there is a lot of conversation that goes on. You can agree or disagree. You can feel one way or the other, and I'll explain my position and how I've come to where I am now. The whole idea is that what we don't know is the trauma that these children have experienced in their life that has nothing to do with school shooting, but then they're getting locked down, and all of a sudden the specter of violence is in the school, and that can interact with the trauma that they've already experienced in their own lives and cause an even bigger problem for the child. And we're not here to hurt children, we're here to protect them. So one of the things when I do a threat assessment, and I do them all across the country, one of the things that I do is I like to do an impromptu lockdown drill. I like to go to the principal of the building and say, would you lock the building down? And they say, well, when? Well, right now. Could you go do a lockdown? I'd like to see how everyone responds. Because for me to do a thorough evaluation of your safety and security protocols, plans, and actions, I have to see things in real time, in real action. So one of the things I always ask for is an impromptu drill, and that is a couple of reasons for that. One, I actually do want to see how your school responds. Do people lock down? Do they do the right thing? Are they fooling around? Do they know what to do? Do they have good places to hide and to lock down? I'm evaluating all of that. I'm also evaluating the leadership of the building, right? Because I've had instances where I say, hey, would you do a lockdown? And I've had school leaders get apoplectic. We only do lockdowns on Thursdays at 2 o'clock. We can't do it now, in absolute panic. And then I've had other administrators say, gee, we usually do them on Thursday at 2 o'clock, but I guess we could do one because you never know when someone's going to attack you. That's the smart thinking. And then I've had other people say, well, we always do them on Thursdays at 2 o'clock, but I want to see how my people respond. Let's do it. So I get the whole picture of how people respond. Well, some states, like New York State, they have taken the idea of trauma-informed response, and they've translated that into a state law that says you cannot do impromptu drills. All drills will be pre-announced. Okay? And I understand that, and I get it. And if that's what New York wants to do, well, when I go to New York, I will abide by New York rules because that's the rules we have to operate under. The idea is to learn how to be safe and not push the limit. You know what I'm saying? But in other places, I do like an impromptu drill. I understand the trauma-informed part of it. I get that completely. But I think the impromptu drill helps us if we do messaging ahead of time, right? So I always tell everybody in the beginning of the year, when you're talking about with your staff about your lockdown drills and what you're going to do, let everybody know. Send a letter home to the parents. We are going to do lockdown drills to keep your children safe. The first one we're announcing. It's Tuesday at 3 o'clock. We're going to do our lockdown drill. Then for the rest of the year, when we do other lockdown drills, some of them may be unannounced. And we're going to talk to the children about why it's important to pay attention, do the right thing. We're telling you, the parents, so that you can have conversations with the children, that they don't have to panic if there's a lockdown drill. What they should concentrate on, is responding the way they've been trained. Go quickly to where they're supposed to go. Get in a safety corner. Make sure the door is closed. All those things that we want them to do, just like a fire drill, right? We don't worry that children think there's a fire in the building. because we want to make sure they can get up and go when the alarm goes off. And lockdown drills are the same way. So the reason that I'm of both minds with this is that in communities where they're concerned about this, using trauma-informed understanding, that this will cause a problem, then we have to respect that. And in communities where they're not concerned as much about that, if they choose to do one impromptu, I think it has great value. And you can talk to other experts out there, and some of them will agree with me, some of them will disagree. This is a practice, right? We're all trying to figure this out. I'm going based on my experience. And I've been doing this for 15 years. I think in 15 years, I've had 2 or 3 parents who were concerned that their child would react negatively to a lockdown drill that was not announced. And I understand that. So when we do these things, and we're going to do them impromptu, I would suggest that you, if you're going to do them, that you notify those parents and let them know they can opt out. The kid doesn't have to be there that day, right? But you want to see how everybody else responds. And the reason that I say that is not because I don't like trauma informed. I do. I think it's very important for us to include that in all of our plans. I think it's a smaller number of children than would be affected by a killer who shows up at your school and doesn't tell you they're coming in advance. And we want to make sure everybody does the right thing. That's the other side of the thinking. So what I'm telling you is you want to figure that out for your community and then do what you think is right. As a leadership test, don't you want to be sure that your administrators can function under stress? Don't you want to make sure your teachers can function under stress? They're the ones who are going to keep our children alive by being the people to stand up and do the right thing in a moment of crisis. And that's difficult. I'm not saying it's not. It's absolutely difficult. But we want to make sure that we're prepared when it happens. All right? So let's see. What is trauma-informed plan? It is a plan that considers not only physical safety, but emotional safety. It's about crafting emergency procedures, drills, and communications in a way that help protect students' mental well-being. So is there an in-between between a completely unannounced drill and a announced drill? Well, maybe there is. Maybe you send a letter home that say, next week, between Wednesday and Friday, we're going to do a lockdown drill. Make sure your student is aware of between Wednesday and Friday, we're going to do a lockdown drill. I would think that would take some of the pressure off the staff of thinking that it's an actual killer at the door, from the students who may be thinking, oh, we were told we're probably going to do a drill. But they still won't be positive, and I think they would then move quickly. They would move to where they would do what we've trained them to do. So that's just an idea. That might be one way, unless your state mandates absolutely you have to notify everybody for every drill. If they don't, and you want to try something in between, try that. Why it's essential. They say 1 in 3 children has experienced at least some form of trauma in their life. It means a significant number of students could be re-traumatized by our traditional lockdowns and active shooter drills. That's what they're trying to get away from. That's what we're trying to prevent, that additional, gee, there's shooting in my neighborhood. I know someone who was killed. Somebody in my family was shot. There's violence in my family. And now my school's locking down because the bad thing's happening and the child is re-traumatized. Nobody wants to traumatize anybody. And I think what I'm talking about here, and the reason I'm bringing this up for you to think about, is because trauma-informed care is extremely important. We need to include it. Think about it when we do our plans, our protocols, our drills, when we try to find ways to secure our schools and protect everyone. We need to include that component. We also have to understand people have to be able to move quickly and fast under pressure. So the key for moving forward is going to be, how do we meld those two things together? How do we do this? So there's, like I said, I think there's a couple of ways we can do it. So I wanted you to think about that. Trauma-informed drills. If anybody wants more information, look to Campus Safety Magazine, put in Lieutenant Joe Pangaro, and you should see my article. If you don't, reach out to me and I will send it to you with some of the research that I have. You can email me at Joe, J-O-E, at pangarotraining.com. Joe at pangarotraining.com. And ask me, hey, Lieutenant Joe, I'd like that material you have on trauma-informed school responses and protocols and plans, and I'd be happy to send it to you. All right, I want to thank everybody for being here. And remember our sponsors, they make all this possible. And everybody stay safe and secure. Until we see you next time, have a great day.